not just for 1 year, but for the duration of this Parliament. And that means that pensions will continue to rise by whichever is higher, 2.5% inflation or average earnings. That means that pensioners have £900 more this winter and likely another £460 from next April.
In other news, a mother who went on holiday to Ibiza rather than attending her son's sentencing for his role in riots has been ordered to pay compensation to the victims. Her 12-year-old son, one of the youngest involved in last month's riots, admitted violent disorder in Manchester. He was in court for attacking a bus and vandalising a vape shop, crimes tied to unrest after a stabbing spree in Southport. The 30-year-old mother was ordered to pay £1,200 compensation, approximately the same price as her holiday, and attend a 6-month parenting course. Now, in the US, Donald Trump and Kamala Harris have met again at a 9/11 memorial event in New York after facing off in their first and possibly only presidential debate last night. The showdown began with a handshake but quickly took a turn when Harris mocked Trump's rallies, accusing him of boring his crowds. Trump hit back, though, defending his popularity and attacking Harris on her immigration stance and economic policies. And back in the UK, the King has found himself in the middle of a scrum when he accepted a hug from a New Zealand women's rugby player. King Charles laughed as he was affectionately mobbed by the Black Ferns, who are in the UK to take on England's Red Roses, after he said, "A hug, why not?" Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. Now it's time for Headliners.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello and welcome to Headliners, your first look at Thursday's newspapers with 3 comedians. I'm Simon Evans, joining me tonight to debate the issues of the day, or tomorrow, a man who's secure about the size of his rally crowds, that's Kerry Marks, and the fully Taylor Swift-endorsed laughing Nick Dixon. So there you are, gentlemen. You've been rallied and debated, basically.
With my big rally crowds.
Yeah.
Taylor endorsed me, but it was all manufactured as part of a publicity thing we did.
Have you got a date for when your relationship is over? Is it?
Yeah. It's all signed, it's all sorted.
I love all that. We'll get back onto that.
Yeah.
Did you both stay up and watch the debate, by the way?
I did, yeah, because I'm dedicated to my work. I had to drag myself away from Outlast on Netflix, which is a survival-based reality show, which is hard for me to stop watching, but I did then watch it, yeah.
Are you trying to shame me for not being dedicated to my work?
Did you not watch it?
I watched it today. That's still dedicated,
yeah, that's all right.
But I didn't watch it all. I watched most of it.
I just sort of monitored it on the Twitter.
Yeah, I watched as much of it as I could, and then the last few minutes I thought, I've really got the gist now and nothing's going to change.
I got the handshake where Kamala walked over to Trump and looked like she was, like, meeting the headmaster, and from then on I thought it was over, but apparently not. She clawed it back. Anyway, we'll come on to that. Let's have a quick look at the front pages. One story dominates the Daily Mail. NHS must reform or die, says the Prime Minister, and Hilly Wallaby is back. Telegraph, NHS does less despite record funding. That's not good. There's Vance and Trump on the front of the Telegraph. Times, Labour orders biggest NHS reform in history. They are going to flog it to Qatar, you watch. Guardian, thousands dying due to NHS delays. The inquiry finds. There is Kamala Harris giving it the thumbs down. The INHS, shake-up biggest since 1948, Starmer promises the UK. And that, of course, was when it began. And finally, Daily Star, nurse. Donald and Elon are out of bed again. They're combining 2 stories. Very clever. Those were your front pages. So let's have a closer look at Thursday's front pages. They all carry much the same story, but we'll start with The Guardian. Kerry? There was a debate. Yes. So Trump and Harris last night, which as I just said, I watched
just about most of it today, and you're probably going to tell me a few moments that I missed something really important in the last few minutes of the debate, but I kind of don't think I did. I didn't see the exploding underpants. But I did see, one of the enduring moments, of course, was Trump saying they're eating the dogs, and then he added the cats as if eating dogs wasn't enough. And I think he was kind of going for the dog lover vote. We all know how that's a floating vote in America, isn't it? I thought it was just kind of a debate with very little real meat to it, you know. And there's a lot of people saying today that that Harris took the fight to Trump. I think what she actually did at times was take the Trump to Trump. In that she used Trump methods of debate against him, which I think surprised him. I think it knocked him off kilt a little bit because
somebody said it was a great phrase. I think it was an opinion columnist, an American one, said that Kamala is she's like learning how to cope with Trump, but her greatest ally in this fight is Trump.
Yeah. Yes, and even I thought it was a very Trumpy thing to do the you get small audiences at your rallies and they don't last long, which was a bit doing this to him, which kind of threw him.
It's funny, isn't it? Because he used to be okay.
No, because you're all falling for the sort of spin. I mean, you're all falling for the Guardian type spin and the Fox News spin. I mean, they're saying Trump in damage control mode, but they're quoting people like Fox News, who are rhinos anyway. People are getting carried away with how well Kamala did. She definitely did better than expected, but she was expected to perform like a mentally ill child, so it's not that hard. She just had to form an occasional sentence. And, you're not going to be worse than Biden. Biden was struggling with advanced dementia, so of course it was going to be much harder than that.
Do you think, in hindsight, they should have the Republicans should have tried to keep Biden in place?
Oh, yeah. I mean, but
yes,
could they have done more to do that?
Of course. And think about that. Why were the moderators, why did they allow Biden to suffer, but they all ganged up on Trump and clearly sided with Harris? Now, they went so far, the moderators, that they took away some of the sort of luster from Harris's performance because it was so obvious what they were doing, repeatedly fact-checking Trump with little snide remarks, but letting Harris repeat the fine people hoax about Charlottesville, completely debunked, even by Snopes, even by the left. Disgusting rubbish. And she was allowed to get away with that completely.
Also, I mean, I'm not going completely on one side here. I was going to be a bit more even-handed, but also claims that he made claims that she was going to get rid of guns and so on. She denied it, but she has talked about the buyback schemes and so on quite a lot with firearms. I mentioned it several times. She also said that at a rally, he said that Trump said there'd be a bloodbath if he wasn't elected, but that's not a correct quote at all. What he said was there would be a bloodbath in the auto industry if he's not elected, which is a completely different connotation. Really.
Bloodbath,
They just doubled down on their lies for the low information.
And there was another one which was corrected, and ABC corrected him on, but it actually turned out to be true. I mean, it's a minor point, but apparently Kamala Harris said that she was happy to see the state pay for illegal aliens to have transex, to have gender reassignment surgery, which turned out to be true, even though it's like...
really? Okay.
It's pocket change, but still.
And these are the things he could have hammered her on more, how radical she is. And he did hammer at the start and the end on the thing that she's in already. Why hasn't she been doing these things already? Because the reality is... Who is running the country? Because Biden's gone, he's disappeared completely, and no one's running the country. So the question is, who's running the country? And when let's say Harris does win, who will be running it then? It won't be Harris. The same people, exactly. So she just needs to be able to speak it up. My worry is that they try and rig it because they've got a vaguely plausible candidate who can talk, and then they try and rig it again. Or not again, if we're not allowed to say that.
But I feel like he wasn't prepared enough.
Satirical content. Go on.
I don't feel like he was prepared enough to deal with all that because she got to repeat her slogans, opportunity, economy, and so on, which are fairly meaningless things. And I felt that he just wasn't prepared to dive in on that and say, what are you talking about? What is it? What is the actual policy? She did a number of things that just seemed a bit daft. At one point, she was talking about women getting abortions, and she actually said they'd have to get on a plane with people they don't know to fly somewhere with. I know. I thought that was
never again.
Pretty common, really.
That does seem to be. I mean, the mad cat lady thing is obviously becoming the divisive, right? The what's his name, Vance's phrase, but that is the key demographic, isn't it? That is the one that votes Kamala all the way.
Oh yeah.
Unmarried women, not necessarily.
But they're not reachable.
But unmarried women. So they're not going to. But they can be activated, more or less activated. If they all come out, then they're in trouble, right?
Yeah, and we'll talk about that later with Taylor Swift. But yeah, he did miss opportunities. He could have been better. I'm not saying it was vintage Trump, although there was an element of vintage Trump in how combative he was. But I think he should have been less combative and actually played it like, I'm in charge here. I'm basically winning. You're rubbish. You're a fake candidate. And he could have just tossed it off like that. But he was a bit aggressive, maybe. Go on.
Can I ask you just on one issue? Because I think the single most important job of the president. I mean, it rhetorically certainly is commander-in-chief, but also it really is. That is the moment at which a single individual sits in a room with Putin or Xi or whatever, you know, the big international summits. They don't seem to really cover that unless you get it off the vibe. But they don't really. I mean, it's been a big 4 years with the Ukraine and Israel, obviously top of the list. But you know, all kinds of other trouble spots. Can you imagine Kamala Harris coping with Iran if they kicked off?
No, or dealing with Putin. It's impossible to imagine. And that's where Trump was strong with his story about Abdul, which is his story of showing him his house, and then that scared him. He is better on that stuff. He could have done a lot more on that.
Yeah.
And I
thought he just skirted over that so fast for so many people who wouldn't even know the story. And it was kind of like, I showed him his house, and it's like, I know, that doesn't really tell people what happened in that meeting.
I know about it because I already know about it.
If I was him, I would take another debate and I would focus on that. Anyway, very quickly, the NHS, Nick, in the Telegraph.
Oh, well, yeah, the Telegraph still also has Trump. And by the way, last thing on Trump, the assassination attempt wasn't mentioned at all, which is insane.
Weird.
But they have Team Trump at odds after debate misfire, so they're actually going with the same angle as The Guardian. Then they've got, NHS does less despite record funding. So all the papers are going with this NHS story that Starmer's basically going to revamp the NHS. It'll be the biggest revamp, quite Trump actually, biggest revamp you've ever seen. And Labour can do it because they're not the nasty party, although people are realising rapidly they are. They're allowed to get away with it. They're in a good position because post-pandemic, obviously people are less warm towards the NHS than they were. Streeting's been getting these reports to back him up. But the only problem is Labour will also be the ones doing it, so it'll be a complete disaster.
Yeah, what do you think? I mean, if they do reform, the only conceivable way in which they reform is to introduce an element of insurance, isn't it, if that's what they're talking about?
Is that what they're talking about? They're talking about the biggest NHS reform in history, which I wouldn't have thought would be bigger than creating the NHS. That was quite a big reform at the time,
since 1948, so that would be it,
Yeah, totally. Look, it needs reforming. You know, the NHS still relies on fax machines and pagers. It's like North Korea
Windows
in there,
95.
You know? So, totally. It's many decades behind, so that reform is happening. But the question is, how much is this being used as a prelude to the budget to say we need to raise taxes and so on? And there's a lot of reasons being laid down now, and everything coming down to tax rises.
I'm afraid that is it. That's it for part one. Coming up in part two, we have a swift half for Kamala and a Bronx cheer for two-tier Kia. See you in a couple of minutes.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
What prompted you to go on your incredible journey?
Well, you know, I was fighting my own demons at the time, you know, before I started the walk, and it had been a long journey, if you like. And, you know, I knew that I needed to make a change, and my daughter had just flown the nest. I was a single parent before this, and previous to that, I was ex-parachute regiment. And I knew that I needed to make a change, because if I didn't, I'm not sure where I would have been now, if that makes sense. So, yeah, something just came into my head at the very end of July and said, look, go and walk the UK coastline. And that's exactly what I did. And 6 years later, we've just finished.
You met your missus on the journey as well, didn't you? So truly, Chris, a transformative journey for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, look, you step into the unknown like that, you know, you have no idea how things are going to work out. You go out with so little expectation, but only really with the aim to, you know, for me personally, to come back feeling a lot better than what I was before I left. And that certainly succeeded. So everything that happened along that journey was one big learning curve. And I got to learn a lot about myself, a lot about, you know, the public and people. And yeah, it was just a life-changing transformation for me. And, you know, I learned so much, and I know what I want to do with the rest of my life as a result of it. And I met the most amazing people. And, you know, I worked hard. 6 years of carrying your house on your back isn't the easiest feat in the world, I can promise you that. But it was worth every single step, because, I rescued a dog along the way. I met my now fiancée, Kate Barron, along the way, and we had a baby together along the way as well. So to start in the position that I did and then end up with all of that coming over the line with me was just something that I never expected. And I couldn't have dreamed it up, to be honest.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
down to earth,
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
and most importantly, honest,
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Oh, welcome back to Headliners. This is your first look at Thursday's newspapers. I'm Simon Evans. I've got Kerry Marks and Nick Dixon with me. Times, Kerry, and Trump and Taylor Swift are never, ever getting back together again after this, I suspect.
No, this is just more Trump-Harris debate, isn't it? And Taylor Swift chose a side after the debate, which I don't know why she didn't already know what she was about. I think most people could have predicted it.
Kerry.
Is that what it was? So, yeah, I mean, look, when famous people endorse, I get why it's just the famous endorsements, celebrity endorsements are a thing, but I don't really get why anyone cares whatsoever what Taylor Swift has to think anyway. She writes songs about ex-boyfriends and people like them, very good, but that doesn't make her a political expert or anyone who should have any kind of sway in a debate that's this important. But, OK, that happens. She says, I'm voting for Harris because she fights for rights and causes, I believe, that we need a warrior to champion them. I'm not sure Kamala has done anything to really show she's a warrior. She did keep repeating last night, I've got a plan. Do you know what, even the way she says that, I find a little bit grating. It's, I've got a plan. It's not like, I've got a plan. There's nothing assertive about it.
Well,
so
I mean, it is difficult when you've been in power for 4 years. But
yes, it is, isn't it? What's your
Swift
plan?
is also widely held to be a psyop anyway. Everyone thinks she's a creation of the FBI.
Yeah, I was going to say
Really?
that they've essentially activated.
Right?
They've activated the asset. Is what they've done. She's already got her fake relationship with the guy with the dumb hat, the football player. Everyone's saying that's fake. It's got a contract.
Well, that's broken up, isn't it? That ended. I think that was that expired like a couple of weeks ago.
No. It was revealed that it has an expiration date.
Oh.
But they were just at the US Open dancing. They were at the US Open dancing. It's not. It was revealed.
You left your helmet.
She denied
it.
She denied it, but it was the claim was that it's a fake relationship.
Yeah.
But they were dancing together to prove it was so genuine.
Well, they're going to have to stay together for another 6 months now, aren't they?
Then she had this cat lady joke. She signed it from a cat lady, which is a reference to Vance, of course. But there is a tragic aspect that, like, all these single women are, they're struggling. They've not got kids. Then they're voting. All they can do is vote for the Democrats to destroy the West as revenge. Yeah. That's their only option. And Musk, to be fair, very nice of Musk. He tweeted, "Fine, Taylor, you win. I will give you a child and guard your cats with my life," which I thought was generous. And with Musk, he has so many children. You actually believe he'll do it.
He could give her one.
You believe he could go to Mars and he could have a child with Taylor Swift.
Might even be
She hasn't agreed to it, though, right?
No, but she'd have to agree with a contract. Let's be very clear.
He didn't mention that, did he?
No,
really.
That's the edgy
part. There was no consent in there.
Child lady. The Express now, Nick, and Nigel Farage heckled for using the phrase two-tier. Perhaps it's time to normalise a narco-tyranny. What do you think?
Well, yes, it's PMQ's Nigel Farage blasts Keir Starmer over two-tier policing as MPs shout shame. And it's a good clip. Our man Farage, although we're totally objective, of course, but he does work here, he said, yesterday we witnessed some extraordinary celebratory scenes outside Britain's prisons, where in some cases serious career criminals were released. To make way for, yes, rioters, but equally those who've said unpleasant things on Facebook and elsewhere on social media. Does the Prime Minister understand there is a growing feeling of anger in this country that we're living through two-tier policing and a two-tier justice system? And someone had to say it because we've seen prisoners letting off champagne bottles in this pure, as you say, narco-tyranny, as I call it, Operation Arkham Asylum, release the prisoners, throw in the political prisoners, pure Joker-esque chaos.
I was going to say, it's
terrible
Batman.
optics.
It's literally Batman, plot, isn't it? Yeah.
It's Gotham will endure. It's pure, it's terrible optics, it's chaos. And what Sunak's saying, nothing. It's harder for him because Starmer can blame it on him, of course, and say, you mess up the prisons. Yeah. But he still should be saying something. But this just proves to me Farage is the real opposition. He's the one asking the question. No one else, to my knowledge, has mentioned two-tier
in
policing,
a funny way,
except reform.
He's kind of like the Joker in this sense, isn't he? In a different sense. But you know what I mean? He's kind of outside of the pack. He's not aligned to a particular suit. He's kind of a wild card. Yeah. And you're right, because the very fact that he has evaded responsibility throughout his political career, he can hold people to account, whereas exactly what you said. I mean, that was the first thing Starmer tried to do, right, was pin it on Sunak.
Yeah.
It's hard to see whether what he's saying, however you feel about Nigel Farage, is why it was even debatable, though, really. There was a police, I think a study that was earlier in the week showing that they made massive mistakes during the pro-Palestine riots and not knowing marches, stroke... hate marches, whatever you want to call it, in which there were loads of arrests that should have been happening and then didn't. And what we are seeing is the fastest rush to court I've ever seen in my life of large numbers of people. Yeah. It's faster than the sale of Oasis tickets. And in the past, you used to have all those prison escape films where it would always start with creating a riot in the prison. But nowadays, the way to do it is to get a riot in the continue, and then you're going to be let out because there's so much space suddenly going to be formed.
And meanwhile, the Manchester 2 are still at large, as I will continue to mention that. The airport, Manchester.
I thought you meant Oasis.
Yeah, totally, yeah.
Well, the Oasis will probably be inside before those two at this point. I mean, that's just becoming absurd now, isn't it? Are they just hoping that's going to go away? Nobody, for instance, has been charged over the defacement of Arthur Balfour's oil painting, the woman who did that on behalf of... I mean, there's so many
no one was
things
charged for driving through Golders Green in London with megaphones shouting to rape women.
Many people are citing
so that's still not happening.
Many people are saying that Lawson Natty just got out. He supplied the machete that killed a 14-year-old boy. The other guy with him killed the boy in Newcastle. He got out in 6 months because his sentence was under 4 years. They can just cut it right down. Starmer's blaming, as you say, he's saying, I'm angry to have to do this because he didn't have to make these choices.
He's had to make room for these, as he said, disobliging Facebook posts.
Yeah.
Ridiculous. Kerry, The Independent now. It seems Starmer thinks those pesky pensioners might still be holding out on him. Got a few more bob in the back pocket.
Going for the pensioners, isn't he? It's hard to tell whether what's going on, with the payment to junior doctors, train drivers and so on might be a little bit of clientelism, and whether there's a little bit of electoral engineering perhaps going on with an attack on old people who don't tend to be Tory voters, which can't blame them for that, but it'd be nice if they were honest about it, if that's the case. This is Starmer refuses to rule out scrapping pensioner council tax discount after winter fuel acts. And we're also hearing, by the way, a possible end to the single occupancy discount for council tax as well, which it wouldn't be surprising if by the end of this term we start seeing mass protests for poll tax coming back in the way things are going right now. It's going completely opposite. There was an assessment by the government on how many additional pensioners will be driven into fuel poverty, but so far they're refusing to publish it for reasons which we haven't been given. And amongst these possible changes is free bus passes might end, and that's the bit that concerns me the most, because I'm 58 now and I've been looking forward to
out for that.
My free bus pass is the one thing. Do you know what I mean? That's just I've been hanging on to that as worth living for, just like that moment where you get
they're targeting us all, Kerry, because what people aren't mentioning here is if they do that. If they get rid of that reduction for single people, what about the poor loaners? What about my loaner discount, 25% off council tax?
Yes.
As a loaner, you already have to pay all the rent and mortgage, etc. yourself, and then you get this one little thing, which is a 25% off.
Yep.
And it is a government handout, but then again, I'm paying for all these people to be on benefits, so I don't really want to hear anyway. So if we're going
it should be 50% anyway, not 25%.
Right, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Yeah, right, because you're only one person instead of two.
Yes.
It's absurd. So they're trying to get rid of that, and also the pensioners, which I find bizarre. As you suggest, they're not the Labour voters. Labour voters, it was indicated, are mainly people on 70+ thousand a year, and it goes up. The more money you earn, the more likely you are to vote Labour, basically.
I mean, it seems to me the obvious thing to do is to means test it with pensioners. We do all understand that a lot of pensioners own their own homes. They're not, they're doing OK, but they need to have some way of being able to monetise that, right? So you just essentially do an equity release thing on their own homes. You put a charge against,
especially
against
when pensions are going up, so it does make that. Yeah. There is an argument, but they're setting the rate quite low. I think, what is it? Is it 13,000 income, which we're looking at? But there's also that, Sunak pointed out that there was a 2017 Labour analysis of the Conservative plans to mean test the payment, which found that it would kill as many as 4,000 pensioners. So. I can't see that will have changed much.
We had a lockdown for that a couple of years ago. Anyway, rental reforms will force rent higher, Nick. This is according to The Telegraph. I am waiting for the top of the market to evict my kids and start cashing in.
You may struggle because they're going to get rid of no-fault evictions. Maybe there is fault. So it says rents will surge 10% under Labour's reforms. So they're going to end fixed-term tenancies, get rid of no-fault evictions and ban bidding wars. As a renter, when I sort of do both now because I'm in London, anyway, it's too complicated. But when I was renting a lot, rolling agreements would have been nice, but landlords don't like them, obviously. But this thing of no-fault evictions I find insane. And banning bidding wars is also mental. And as they say, we'll create an inverse bidding war. You'll just bid up to the price set. They're going to say it has to be a certain price. You can't bid over it, weirdly. So that's very strange. As people point out, it's an attempt to control the market. It never actually works. It always backfires. I mean, rent's gone up 6.1% on average. Someone here is saying they used to go up 2% a year before the government started interfering. They're trying to interfere far too much. The thing that's not really mentioned, they do mention that the heart of it is a supply and demand issue.
Yeah.
But what they don't mention is the demand side, which is immigration. They mention we've got to build more. That's the other thing. But the other thing is the ridiculous levels of immigration we've had. Yeah. I think it's a part of it. Really, you can't get past that supply and demand with loads of regulation.
Well, especially in London, where it's obviously, it's more intense, and the social housing is such an immigration-related issue.
Sure.
There. It's absurd.
I couldn't disagree more, though, about the one thing, which is the bidding war, which I think is horrifying. I think it's the one that I didn't even know about it until the last time I moved house. And I've rented all my life, and then you go along, you look at a place, that's the price, and then if the landlord likes you or agrees you're a good tenant and so on, then you get the place. And so, for the first time ever, I was going to look at a place, and property after property, they say, if you like this property, you have to put in your bid by the end of today. Now, you can't compare this with the buying market. Like, by the end of today, and then I have to trust an estate agent who then tells me someone has bid £300 more than me. Yeah. And what do you mean anyway? This guy, Timothy Douglas.
Market, and I find it unpleasant enough.
It's unpleasant enough.
Involved,
but then you have some time over it, and also you have some idea of what other people are offering. But this is Timothy Douglas of Property Market, who says he said tenants were often coming in to offer more because they like a property. I don't believe that. I don't believe any tenant has ever arrived at a place going, I like this so much, I'm willing to pay more for it. No one does that. I think this is blackmail by house owners and so on who are renting out their property, saying, if you put in these changes, we will increase rent.
You know what? You're right about that. You are right about the bidding war. It should just be the price that says you should be able to go under it, but I suppose you can in this.
Yeah.
I suppose I was thinking of just I don't like the government just dictating the price. You should just be able to make an offer. I always like the idea you can just make an offer, but I'm thinking of down. Yeah.
What's the value of the place? It's cost $1,900 a month. That's the price. And now they're free to make choices based on who they want to.
But you're right. But the heart of your problem is still, even though you're right, is the supply and demand issue. You're only in these absurd bidding wars because there's not enough property.
You need surge pricing on the rent, don't you? Anyway, let's take a visit to... Have we got time to squeeze that one in? Let's see if we can get this in before the break. Daily Mail, Kerry, some of the anti-immigrant rhetoric coming out of Germany is not dissimilar to that used in 2023 London.
It's got that similarity to it. They're telling us of an EU civil war, which I think is hopefully metaphorical, as Germany migrant plan continues, and Geert Wilders, is it pronounced Geert or Geert?
Geert Wilders.
Geert Wilders?
Yeah.
OK, so Geert Wilders vows to copy it for the Netherlands. Hungary welcomes Berlin to the Stop Migration Club, which sounds like a club that's very hard to join. So this is really... Well, what we're seeing, Germany is responding to the terrorist incidents recently and the rise of the AfD in East Germany, whose popularity you can't really ignore anymore. Austria is also saying if they'll do it, they'll do the same thing. Of course, this dates back to a few years ago when Angela Merkel decided that immigration is a good thing, less than 1 million. That million have spread out, and this led to other problems. There is a feeling, there's arguments that Russia is also weaponising migration to cause instability throughout Europe. And really, in a sense, one of the problems we're having doing anything about migration is trying to get a plan throughout Europe. And it might make a difference to our policies if some of the European countries start having a deterrent, which doesn't really exist at the moment. So they're even talking about, there is discussion about using or taking the Rwanda plan, which I think is that's Germany talking about it now.
I think it's
the plan we've dropped, which should be kind of embarrassing for our government.
It used to be Erdogan had quite a strong hand on this, didn't he, with Turkey? That was like one of the big filters. But I guess if they come across the Med more now, that is...
Yeah, I don't know about that, but it's quite funny you say about the Rwanda thing. This guy, the German migration commissioner, says, well, adding a deterrent like the Rwanda scheme could take away the motivation to come to the EU. Yeah, that's the point.
Yeah.
But what's really interesting about this story as well, it's all interesting, but is the sort of the war between Germany and the EU now, because they're normally sort of on the same page, but now they're really at odds over this. And the more the people, the politicians across Europe have to get in line with the people. Their Overton window is so much narrower, especially in this country. But they have to get in line with them, or they'll just be ultimately removed.
Yes. They've held the line for 70 years post-war or something, haven't they? But it's creaking now. That's it for part 2. In part 3, St JK comes to the rescue, and the Telegraph introduced readers to the right-wing Michael Moore. I wonder who that could be. We'll see in a couple of minutes.
Evening, time for your weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Pretty cold out there this evening. Temperatures are going to fall further through the night. Yes, there will be a touch of frost, particularly in parts of the north in the countryside, thanks to the winds coming around this area of low pressure all the way down from the Arctic, hence why we do have the chill at the moment. There's a fair few showers still around this evening, but for many they'll tend to fade. We'll keep some going in northern Scotland, a few for the north of Northern Ireland, northern parts of Wales, northwest England, but elsewhere many areas dry and clear, and the wind's easing a touch overnight, which is why those temperatures will tumble down to 4 or 5 degrees in towns and cities, but rural spots, particularly in the northern half of the UK, likely to be close to or a little bit below freezing to start Thursday. So yes, a chill in the air tomorrow morning, and there will still be showers in the air as well coming in across northern Scotland. Still a fairly brisk wind, but not as lively, not as gusty as the winds have been through the day today. Those breezes will bring a few showers across the northern parts of Northern Ireland, plenty packing in across Wales, although the south coast probably dry, and a good part of England having a dry, fine and sunny start to Thursday, albeit with that chill in the air. Now, as we go through the day, we'll see the clouds bubbling up a little bit, but I don't think we'll see as many showers as we've seen through the course of today. It's still plenty for Wales and a few more coming into southwest England and across northern Scotland, but much of southern Scotland dry, and large parts of eastern England and the Midlands also staying dry and dodging the showers with some sunny spells. But despite a bit of sunshine, temperatures on the chilly side. Similar values to today, but at least the winds tomorrow will be a little lighter. Lighter still on Friday, and even again likely to see more of a frost on Friday morning. Much of the country, though, will be dry and fine on Friday. We will see rain coming into the northwest. The wind's picking up here as well. That's a sign of a change. Things turning wetter across the north into the weekend, staying dry in the south, and slowly warming up.
Tune in to Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. GB News royalty with your perfect start to the weekend. Lucky us! Feisty and fearless guests.
Well, I'm a normal person, so ask me.
Honest opinions.
That raises more questions than a Gary Barlow tax return.
And a few surprises along the way.
Might be cold in this studio.
That is Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. 8 to 9 only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
And welcome back to Headliners Guardian, Nick. And it sounds like billions are being spent to forward an agenda that we forward every night for peanuts.
Exactly.
Where's our cash?
I know, where's the cash? So religious groups spending billions to counter, billions and billions, as Trump would say, to counter gender equality education. And this is basically The Guardian discovering that people spend money advancing political causes that they agree with, and The Guardian are stunned by this. They're absolutely shocked. So there's apparently some of the things they're doing in school. Well, it talks about how Christians and are putting in their views into schools, which, of course, is exactly what Guardian wants to do, just with their own views. They want woke indoctrination.
Different religion.
Yes, exactly. So they say tactics include removing sex education from schools, banning girls from learning, reinforcing patriarchal gender stereotypes in textbooks, and rejecting gender-inclusive language. In other words, a load of based stuff. What were you going to say?
Removing girls from education, they're conflating like the Taliban or something there, aren't they? With Christianity. Just going, what, can we wait until they're 7 before we show them about rimming?
Listen to this bit. In Chile, in Chile, Catholic schools have used educational material that portrays men as heads of households. Do you mean the Bible? That's literally the Bible.
Portrays men as heads of households.
Yeah, how dare you?
Terrifying.
The patriarchy. Kerry probably agrees with the Guardian. I can see in his eyes he loves
This is such a Guardian article, because we don't really know what it is they're referring to. They start off by saying that Christians, Catholic schools and Islamists are fighting this together, which I thought they'd be for, because that's inclusion. I thought inclusion was a good thing, all these different groups joining in. It's hard to know, really, though, whether they're talking about something very religious or whether they're talking about getting rid of DEI, diversity, equity and inclusion, in which case they're now saying they're seeing that as, therefore, it's against equality and against girls learning and so on. You're about to
Well, I was just going to say, I
me.
can't remember why, but I just looked at the Wikipedia page for trans woman this evening, and it is so, like, the first paragraph is so disputable and loaded and debatable, their definition of it, that kind of thing. They're pushing back against that, I think.
Well, I think so, but what I'm saying is that it's not clear enough that they might actually, maybe this group is about stopping girls learning. And that does sometimes...
There's no group of billionaires in Britain or America that are trying to get girls out of school.
I don't know, though. There could be a difference between... There's differing motives, and there's a religious crossover that could be extremist. Yeah. I'm not seeing it mentioned here, so I doubt it. I don't think that is what it is. But we do see that. We see... I remember the movement some years ago against rape jokes in comedy and so on, and it was a feminist movement, but it was also joined in with by religious groups and prudes who didn't have any interest in the feminist agenda, but pretended they were, because there was absolutely, you can't joke about that. Similarly, I remember when the Arab Party got in as part of the coalition in the last Israeli government, and the first thing they did was they wanted to ban gay marriage, and then of course the Orthodox Jewish people were like, oh, the Arab Party's nice. We're into that as well. So sometimes you get these issues, and that's what we're seeing on the left as well. We get issues that bring in a wide range of people, of different viewpoints, that aren't really on board with each other at all. They're just joining coalition. Exactly. For forces for these purposes.
Do you want to add anything to that, Nick? You already did your bit.
Yeah, I think we nailed it.
OK, we'll go on to the Telegraph. Kerry, further news at the J.K. Rowling. The J.K. Rowling. She is an institute. She is fast becoming the de facto protector of the Scottish people, in fact.
Yes, should we be emphasising the row bit now? Because she's investing £1.9 million in women-only services for sexual violence victims, which in this day and age is divisive. It's actually controversial to have women's spaces for women. So she's setting up an alternative to the scandal-hit rape crisis centre in the Scottish capital, which was run by a biological man. It was called the Edinburgh Rape Crisis Centre, which was a good name for it. But, of course, you've got a man who identifies as a woman, which isn't going to suit a lot of women who are dealing with sexual violence. And it's a bit weird that someone who's dealing with the reaction to sexual assault then also has to go through a process of buying into an ideology that trans women are women in order to go to a safe space. And I think everyone who's been suffering violence of any kind should get some kind of help. But there are reasons why there should be safe spaces for women.
It should be acknowledged, shouldn't it, with some sensitivity, whereas the woman, I can't remember her name, it's an Indian woman, isn't it, who runs this refuge, there's some quite sort of chilling paragraphs in which she says, we understand that bigots are sometimes subject to violence too. Violence doesn't discriminate. Bigots can be assaulted, but they cannot expect to come here and not have their views challenged. I'm like, you've just escaped an abusive relationship and you're coming to a refuge.
Yes.
And you're having your views about transsexuality challenged.
You now get an impromptu lecture from Robin DiAngelo. It's absurd. Yeah, of course, women should be able to have their own space. Absolutely obvious, and it's absurd that it has to be sort of privately funded by J.K. Rowling. Although I didn't think this was a news story. I suppose she said she was going to do it a while ago, and then that was the story.
The figure.
Yes, I heard it a while ago.
But, I mean, maybe this is controversial, but remember that documentary, The Red Pill, where she pointed out actually men also need their own spaces like this. Then you'd have to have a third place for trans spaces, I guess. I think it's very complicated, but...
Well, as a man, if I was escaping a violent, relationship, I'd probably be all right with a trans woman running the refuge. I think I would probably be able to cope with that. I
couldn't see you going to the refuge, Simon, really. You would just sort of go on a long walk or something.
I would just be neutral. I would just punching the sand on the beach. Daily Mail, Nick, and an Ohio man, I believe we've got a clip of this, an Ohio man wishes his son had been killed by someone like me. Sadly, his son has already been killed by someone else. Have we got a clip? Yeah, here we go.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there.
Not the clip.
So not the clip.
So we'll just ignore that. This is, I think, possibly in Springfield too, but this is an Ohio man anyway.
Yeah. So this is father of Ohio boy killed by Haitian migrant in Springfield crash makes shocking remarks as town is put at forefront of presidential debate. So this was this shocking video that came out. Now, the man, Nathan Clark, has suffered the tragic death of his 11-year-old boy, Aiden Clark, and it is absolutely horrible. An immigrant from Haiti ran his minivan into a school bus. More than 20 were injured, and Aiden Clark was killed, which is obviously tragic and horrific. But the bizarre and shocking development is that the father said, I wish that my son was killed by a 60-year-old white man, and his point being that it wouldn't then be politicised. Yeah. And he's saying that Trump and Vance have to stop mentioning it and they should apologise. So that's very disturbing in many ways. Obviously, he suffered this tragedy, but it is, of course, completely legitimate to question whether this man should have been here because he had an invalid driving licence.
Yeah.
He clearly didn't know the rules of the road in America, or at least he was not a good driver, and these things are relevant, and he crashed into a school bus. So then to turn it, he's also politicising it in a strange way. Yeah. It is a very odd response, to, many people think, to do that. Of course, he's a father. I don't blame him for sort of saying things in his grief, but it does seem to me a completely legitimate thing to say, what, should we really have these people in the country who are killing children?
Some people, and we've seen this for a number of years now, they double down on liberal beliefs when they encounter, violence from their fathers whose daughters are raped and killed, and they kind of like welcome the perpetrator into their family or whatever in order to. This was a German guy, I remember this clearly, but
like a kind of Stockholm syndrome, you mean?
Almost, yeah. Well, I mean, I don't want to diagnose it, but it is striking sometimes and alarming. But this particular story, it's not an outlier either. There's an awful... I mean, we've been talking about the cats and dogs, the Haiti, it's suddenly become this very vivid, cartoonish image. But there's a lot of video footage circulating of huge numbers of road traffic accidents because a huge number of people who do not have any kind of familiarity with American driving regulations or the road system.
Do they still get driving licences, though? I'm assuming that even if he was illegal or whatever, he still had to go through some kind of...
He didn't. I looked into this. He had an invalid... it was deemed invalid, his licence. It was something... It was from Mexico or something. Yeah. It was not deemed a valid licence.
Yeah.
So
it's not
so
like
in that case, there is a
guy
case.
who has just happened to be in it. This is like a phenomenon.
Yeah, it's
at the same time, I think there's only so much credence we give to the message of he's a grieving father. He's deeply in pain and upset, and it's awful for him to see politics as against his views being used in this way. So
that is fair as well. Well, that is it for part 3. In the final section, we have tech news from Ford listening to your car chat to a cure for hangovers. So swings and roundabouts. We'll see you in a couple of minutes.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
EasyJet is launching a new recruitment drive focused on attracting cabin crew members over 50 and those even considering retirement.
Well, the initiative is called Returnships and is inspired by research that suggests that 75% of people over 50 years old believe that now is the ideal time to embark on a new career.
Joining us now to discuss what it takes to embark on a second career as cabin crew is Helen Williams. Good morning, Helen.
Hi, good morning, Helen.
Welcome. Just touching down in our studio.
It is. I've had a few days off and now I'm here.
So you are now cabin crew.
I am.
What inspired you to get into it? What did you do before? How did it all come around?
Oh, so when I graduated, I took an office job with my grad scheme, and that job lasted 6 months, and I started working for a European carrier. I did just over 5 years at that European carrier and had an absolutely fabulous time. I then went on to a wet lease operation with an Irish carrier and another mainline UK carrier. I then decided to have time out. I had a business, I had a family, I had children, and last autumn I decided, why not? Let's go back and do it all again. So returning to that European carrier that I'd worked at when I was in my early 20s.
And what is that like for you now, returning that bit older, having that life experience, having your children? Do you think that's been a benefit to you?
It's absolutely been a benefit. I mean, the amount of parents that thank me for helping me with their small children when they're crying on a flight. I am that person now.
When you went back for a second time.
Yeah.
Did you notice more sort of older people amongst your sort of colleagues?
I did. So when I returned onto my initial course in March of this year, just over half the course were over the age of 30.
Wow.
Which was absolutely phenomenal. And I was expecting to return and be with a lot of younger, 18, 19, 24. I was expecting to be that dinosaur. And that first day of training, to find out that I wasn't the dinosaur, you have no idea how exciting that was. And they've gone on, that particular group, to be phenomenal crew members.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
And welcome back to the final section of Headliners. Tonight we kick off, Kerry, with advertising news in the Telegraph. And you go, oh, that's interesting. We seem to have jumped one. No, you wanted to do the community cohesion one, didn't you?
Not particularly wanted to, but let's do a quick dive on it, shall we? Just real fast. So, Starmer urged to restore community cohesion programmes in schools. This is Professor Ted Cantle, from the leading think tank, British Future. What he's saying is that we could, because of what happened in the riots and so on, the way to avoid that is to get down to root causes with community cohesion projects, which I'm not quite sure. Look through it here, and I think it's to do with going to sports clubs together at school levels and getting people to visit mosques to see how nice, friendly and fun they are, which might make some difference, I guess. I don't really know. Perhaps, as part of a religious education course, it might be good to go to a mosque. What might be also good is to find the Bailey teacher who's in hiding somewhere for having shown a picture of the Prophet and get him out of hiding. I think that might really go well.
That's the thing. It's almost like another example of two-tier community cohesion as well. You know, there's a certain kind of group of people being reached out to, and you never quite feel...
But if it works, maybe we could put the rioters in the mosque, seeing as the prisons are full, and that might calm down a bit.
It's nonsense. It's this guy, Professor Ted Cantle, he's saying, oh, you need to get to the root causes. OK, fine, of the riots, absolutely agree. But it turns out he doesn't really mean that. He says Starmer needs to develop a narrative about the way we as a society should live together. And what you end up realising is, when he says community cohesion, he means papering over the real problems in society with a narrative about why multiculturalism is great. That was certainly my interpretation.
It's Jonathan Miller and Enoch Powell on the Dick Cavett Show yet again, isn't it? Part 28. Anyway, now we move on to advertising news in the Telegraph. You can have it any colour you like as long as you overheard your car saying it. Oh, have I missed one?
It's all right. I mean,
it's all gone chaotic.
We can do that if you like. Why not? You just call
with
them.
the wrong clip from Springfield, and
we'll just shuffle while you shout out numbers. Ford files patent. It's just a patent at this stage to eavesdrop on drivers' conversations. So the idea of this is about advertising and basically the cars that will listen into people's chat in the car in order to decide what to advertise for you. I don't know whether it's going to tell the difference between who's a passenger and who's not, and whether you're going to get your passenger to get out after talking about fishing, and then the car will believe you want fishing ads from now. This is going to happen. This is what I'm going to say on it, whether we like it or not, soon eventually there'll be chips in our heads, everything will listen to us, your pen will listen, your underpants will watch things, and walls will have ears.
I was going to say about walls, I mean, I assume this is going to be like in-car stereo, infotainment or whatever is going to advertise to you, but I wonder at some point if they're also going to be able to change the billboards that you drive past as well, as you see them coming.
This reminded me, you haven't watched Succession, have you, foolishly, but this HBO show Succession, they have one of the guys has a pitch where he's like, what if we said "we hear you" as a slogan? But it turns out they've been rather aggressively listening to all their customers. That's what this reminded me of. And then, and also, I think we would all be sacked immediately if the cars were overhearing. But I do think, remember Comic Car Journeys, where you probably still go on them? comics were probably paid to get those conversations and hear who's been slagged off for like 3 or 4 hours. What do you think?
It's going to be a podcast as well, isn't it?
It was always out of blue.
Pre-recording.
Nick, let's go back to the one I jumped by mistake about Michael Moore, the Conservative Michael Moore.
Sure, why not, if we're doing stuff like that? So it's the Conservative Michael Moore taking on the crazy diversity industry. And this is basically a think piece from Tim Stanley, actually, about Matt Walsh, because he has this new
is that who it is?
film.
Okay.
Yeah, he has this film, Am I Racist, coming out. And shockingly, people like Robin DiAngelo, author of the awful book White Fragility, showed up in the film. Now, it does say that she was paid $15,000, so that might have been why. But you start to wonder why these people, you know, showed up and didn't know that Michael Moore... I mean, I actually... Ben Shapiro and Matt Walsh retweeted me because I said Matt Walsh slightly changing his hair and calling all these people like Robin DiAngelo has got me reassessing Clark Kent's glasses.
Yes, I was going to say,
It worked. It was extraordinary that it worked. And it is very interesting. And there's an interesting discussion of comedy and how, you know, now it's moved to the right because the establishment is obviously on the left and the difficulty, the sort of paradoxes of that, basically.
And we have time just to squeeze in this last one about the one good piece of new technology. No jetpacks, no flying cars, but something that's going to improve my life. This is in the Mirror, Nick.
The Mirror has...
the hangover cure.
Yeah, OK. Rapid alcohol-reducing shot claims to work in just half an hour to keep hangover at bay. Basically, it's called the safety shot, which already sounds not that cool for people who like heavy drinking. And it just accelerates the metabolism of alcohol in the body and reverses the unpleasant effects of hangovers. The other thing that does that is just not drinking, which is usually my preferred method.
Yeah, does it mean we can drink more? Does it get rid of bruises?
I think it does, yeah.
Does it get rid of the stuff you say?
What they call the drinking injuries, yeah. There is, you know, Professor... Is it David Nutt? Professor Nutt, anyway.
That's right,
He has created an alcohol-type liquid that has got an antidote. So it will get you drunk like alcohol, and then you drink the antidote and you're completely clear, but he can't get a licence for it, he claims.
Really? OK.
Crazy
Look
professor.
forward to it.
But do you not drink at all, Nick?
Occasionally do now, just because you go to these social events and, like, you have to talk to people. But I think I might just stop going to all social events and then just never drink.
Yeah.
Because I can't. There is always a waste of time.
Thing you can do at social events, my dad taught me this, is your first one you have a gin and tonic, and then after that you just, like, rim the glass with gin, and the aroma of it will convince you that you're still drinking it, even though you just drink...
That is the saddest thing I've ever heard in my life.
Well, he used to have to do this if it was like
drink.
a company do. You know?
How do you cope with talking to all the people, though?
It's funny, but it's all about bravado, isn't it? That's why I don't even like champagne, but it is good for that one purpose, isn't it? It gives you that little bit of a kick. Anyway, we need to wind it up. The show is nearly over. Let's take another last look at Thursday's front pages. The Daily Mail, NHS must reform or die, says the Prime Minister. The Telegraph, NHS does less despite record funding. The Times, Labour orders biggest NHS reform in history. The Guardian, thousands dying due to NHS delays. Inquiry finds the eye. NHS shake-up is the biggest since 1948. Starmer the promises the UK. And finally, the Daily Star. Nurse, Donald and Elon are out of bed again. Those are your front pages. That's all we have time for. Thanks to my guests, Kerry Marks and Nick Dixon. Leo Kearse will be here tomorrow at 11 p.m. with Nick and Lewis Schaefer. And if you're watching at 5 a.m, stay tuned for breakfast.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Evening, time for your weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Pretty cold out there this evening. Temperatures are going to fall further through the night. Yes, there will be a touch of frost, particularly in parts of the north in the countryside, thanks to the winds coming around this area of low pressure all the way down from the Arctic, hence why we do have the chill at the moment. There's a fair few showers still around this evening, but for many they'll tend to fade. We'll keep some going in northern Scotland, a few for the north of Northern Ireland, northern parts of Wales, northwest England, but elsewhere many areas dry and clear, and the wind's easing a touch overnight, which is why those temperatures will tumble down to 4 or 5 degrees in towns and cities, but rural spots, particularly in the northern half of the UK, likely to be close to or a little bit below freezing to start Thursday. So yes, a chill in the air tomorrow morning, and there will still be showers in the air as well coming in across northern Scotland. Still a fairly brisk wind, but not as lively, not as gusty as the winds have been through the day today. Those breezes will bring a few showers across the northern parts of Northern Ireland, plenty packing in across Wales, although the south coast probably dry, and a good part of England having a dry, fine and sunny start to Thursday, albeit with that chill in the air. Now, as we go through the day, we'll see the clouds bubbling up a little bit, but I don't think we'll see as many showers as we've seen through the course of today. It's still plenty for Wales and a few more coming into southwest England and across northern Scotland, but much of southern Scotland dry, large parts of eastern England and the Midlands also staying dry and dodging the showers with some sunny spells. But despite a bit of sunshine, temperatures on the chilly side. Similar values to today, but at least the winds tomorrow will be a little lighter. Lighter still on Friday, and even again likely to see more of a frost on Friday morning. Much of the country, though, will be dry and fine on Friday. We will see rain coming into the northwest. The wind's picking up here as well. That's a sign of a change. Things turning wetter across the north into the weekend, staying dry in the south and slowly warming up.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
You could be the next Great British Giveaway winner with a whopping £36,000 in tax-free cash in your bank account. Imagine getting the winning phone call for that.
You never expect to win.
It was unexpected, of course. I only put in one little entry.
I blocked the phone number to start with.
I would say get your entries in. And if I can win it, anybody can win it.
For another chance to win £36,000 in